Okay, it's recording.
Sit up there or Judy sit there? Yeah, here.
Okay. Shemai, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the January 2025 Agua Caliente Regional Listening Session for the California Truth and Healing Council. My name is Christina Snider-Ashtari, and I'm Michal Kawana, I'm a Makamo, and a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Poe Indians and serve as Tribal Affairs Secretary for Governor Gavin Newsom. I was reminded this morning on my LinkedIn that it's been 6 years that I've been working for this governor, so it's a lot. First of all, I'd like to thank Agua Caliente for your partnership in hosting us here today, and for the great food. And if anybody hasn't gotten any, please feel free to get up and get some. We are not hostage to this circle. You can get up and get coffee, get water, run to the restroom as needed. And as always, thank you to our amazing Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs team for your work in coordinating this convening. We will first go into some logistics before going into introductions of our council members who are present. We'll then also frame today's discussion and give some background on what the Truth and Healing Council is and kind of what we're here today to be doing. So as a reminder, we're recording this convening. There's 2 cameras, if you saw them. We're recording this convening and we'll be posting it to the Office of Tribal Affairs YouTube channel. Please let us know if at any point you'd like us to pause the recording, and we can do that. We want to make sure that anything that goes up on the internet or is publicly available is what you want to be publicly available. We want this to be a safe space, and so that you can share without feeling like things might be repeated outside of this space, or like this will be kind of on display for other folks. And so if you're also recording on your personal device, we ask that you adhere to this type of thing too, so that if people say, hey, I don't want to be recorded right now, that everybody just stop recording. And if there's anything that you say at any point today where later, a week down the road, a couple weeks down the road before we post this onto YouTube, because we're processing a bunch of videos right now, so it'll take a little bit of time. If there's anything that you say that you think later, I wish I hadn't said that, or I wish I had said something differently and I just don't want that to be out there, let us know. We can edit the video before we post it on the YouTube, and your public statement won't include whatever it was that you had some anxiety about. For those interested in following the council, ongoing updates including listening session recordings and listening session summary documents are available at the California Truth and Healing Council updates blog at catruthandhealing.com. You can also get updates for events by following the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Additional details, including meeting dates, agendas, and background information, are available at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC. Our next regional hearing, and this will be our last regional hearing, and before we go dark for a little bit while we're kind of working on the draft, will be next week at Quitson. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as Christina mentioned, next week on January 31st, we will be at the Quitson Community Center in Winter Haven. The event runs from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., but the tribe does operate on Arizona time. And so just wanted to flag that for folks, because I know I myself will be confused, because I think once you're on the reservation as well, like your phone might reset, sometimes it doesn't. So for California time, it's 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And again, that is next Friday, 31st, and it's an elders and youth gathering that we're plugging into. And so I think it'll be a really great event. Afterwards, there's a community gathering as well with dancing and singing. And so encourage you all to attend that as well.
And then it just occurred to me based on some conversations we were having at lunch, not to be alarmist or anything, but if you are staying in Yuma, we are in Arizona, we are in a kind of a strange space near the border, and so if you can bring your proper identification just so that we don't have any issues, we want to make sure that everybody has a safe time going to our last regional convening, but our understanding of the dynamics in that part of the state and in that fudgy part of Arizona as well. So I'd now like to remind everyone that in joining us here today, you agree to adhere to the Council's principles for respectful engagement, which I'll summarize for you in a moment. A copy of the principles is available for your use and review at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC. Refusal to adhere to the principles, which apply to all participants, whether present or not, may result in your removal from today's convening. If you feel at any time that you need to step out or you may be in need of assistance, please find one of our team and we'll help you get some air. And I'll introduce you to some of our partners who are here today to help you navigate some difficult emotions. In order to create a space where participants feel welcome, respected, and able to speak comfortably, we'll uphold the following principles in all convenings of the Council. We ask that all of you work toward sharing in their stewardship. If you're a participant in our convening here, we ask that you engage in the work of the Council and with others in an open and respectful way. Engage in behaviors that will make others feel welcome. Take care of your emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical well-being, and seek support as you need it. Finally, I'd like to remind attendees that as we work through today's discussions, this process is necessarily open to all Californians, but we ask that those here as allies ensure that they please respect the space and voice of California Native participants, particularly elders in this process. For those members of the press in attendance or academia in attendance or watching this after the fact, we ask that you engage with this process with deference to the Native experience and that you commit to obtaining consent and final review from the Native peoples that you hear from today. We don't want this to be an extractive process, and we hope that you'll assist us in creating a safe space that is open, transparent, and welcome to all. Today we have a few guests with us, so I'd like you both to introduce yourselves before we go any further. Shante?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shante Grillo. I am Northern Sierra Miwok and a citizen of the Island Band of Miwok Indians. I'm here representing the California Consortium for Urban Indian Health, and I help the council connect with healers and mental health professionals who we bring in to provide you all with emotional and spiritual support as we discuss these very difficult but important topics. So yeah, if you need any help or you need somebody to help you recenter or take a breath, Kiana is our healing partner today. She'll introduce herself, but you can also let me know. I'm not a mental health professional, but I am here for you if you need somebody to help you recenter. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Kiana Malay. I come from the Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone tribe. I currently live out on Cahuilla Island in San Diego. You'll see me around in a bunch of different roles and hats. I teach in some of the colleges and all that. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and so I'm here as a mental health helper today. If you need anything, absolutely anything, feel free to just give me eye contact. They'll head tap something. I'll step out with you. I brought some fresh white sage with me. Sometimes that can help ground you if you start to feel yourself get a little bit activated. Just reach out to me or just give me a signal, and I'll let you take some of that. Or I'm just here for whatever you need.
Would you mind starting us off with your
Okay, so one thing that we like to do, because some of the conversations, they get really hard when we're in these spaces, although they're extremely important, is we like to do grounding exercises. And grounding just means that we bring ourselves to the present moment, because sometimes our brains can just be all over the place. There's so much going on. I mean, how many of y'all feel like there's 25 levels in your head and you're just like ping, 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 right? So we want to just kind of ground and bring it down. And so whenever I do this, I always make sure to ask you to just get in a comfortable position, whatever that means to you. It doesn't have to be feet on the floor, you have to cross your legs, you have to lay down, whatever comfortable means to you. And today we're going to kind of go into our bodies and kind of feel the sensations that come up to kind of ground us to the present moment. So get comfortable, And we'll take a deep breath. And you can leave your eyes open or closed, whatever feels good to you. And to start out, we're going to just notice the tip of our toes. What kind of sensations come up? Do they feel warm or cold? Maybe tingly. And then we'll move our way up to your calves. And as we're doing this, you can give them a little squeeze if you want, just letting them know that we're here. And then move our way up to our thighs. And just notice what you're feeling. Maybe you feel the comfort of the seat, or the feeling of the fabric of your clothes touching them. Take another deep breath as we move our way up to our bellies. Sometimes a lot of stress gets carried in our bellies. Just feel what it feels like right now. Maybe it's nice and full from the sandwiches we had. And a deep breath and move up to our chest. And just notice the beat of your heart and the rise and fall of your breaths. And then we'll move up to our face, whichever part feels like it's calling to you right now. So for me, it's like around my temples. It might be your nose or your eyes. And just notice what sensations come up. If they feel warm or cold. If they feel tense at all, loosen them up a little bit. And a deep breath, and we'll move to the top of our head. And just notice. And when you're ready, come back to the present moment, open your eyes. Just notice what's here with us right now.
Thank you. So I'm gonna first give you all an overview. I know some of you have been following this for a while, so this is gonna be a repeat, so you can go back into your grounding mode and just take a little nap for a minute. But I'm gonna give you all a quick overview of what the California Truth and Healing Council is, why it is, what's next for this council, and what we're doing here today. So what is the California Truth and Healing Council? This council is a native-driven, native-led, California native-led council that was created under Executive Order N-1519, which is the executive order that Governor Newsom issued to apologize to all California Native Americans for the historical injustices imposed on Native people by the state of California in the early days of statehood. He did this basically coming into office and saying, you know, he had some really good relationships down here. And he had some idea of what the priorities of California tribes were, but wanted to really elevate the state's positioning and posture toward California tribes and Native people generally once he assumed office. As many of you may remember, the previous governor had strong relationships with tribes, had a strong tribal consultation policy, had strong history with protection of cultural resources and sacred sites. And so in wanting to do more and better, we had to be creative about what that was and what would this actually look like to have a trajectory of working really well with California tribes. At the time, we had each agency and department had a tribal consultation policy, and many had tribal liaisons. And so we had the beginnings of what could be a robust ongoing commitment to California tribes if it could be implemented in a way that could reach beyond a tribal liaison or beyond you know, a requirement to have a tribal consultation policy, and really convert into a practice of tribal relations, respectful tribal relations, understanding of tribal issues, ongoing relationships that were iterative and ongoing, and people staffed with these jobs who really had a commitment to understanding and doing better with the full context of the state's role in the displacement, genocide, removal of Native people from our practices, from our homelands, from our sustenance. And so at the time, we would sometimes have meetings, and there would be kind of almost no understanding from the state side why we had to have these tribal consultation obligations, why we needed to even understand tribal equities, why we needed to talk to people about sacred sites or cultural resources. And so we had this, it was a weird space at the time in these meetings where you had some people who were incredibly good at this because they did understand this background and they knew it because they had committed themselves to knowing it, or they had a background in cultural resources, or they were Native. And then you had some people who were kind of like, why do we have to do this? What's the point? And had no idea that part of the reason why tribes were in the state that they were today, that they were in 10 years ago, that they were in pre-gaming, that they've been in since, basically contact. Most of that happened under American California during the gold rush and the successive waves of settler colonization that happened after that. So really, when the governor wanted to do something new and big and better, we thought about what could be something that could have major impact, major reach, and actually make a difference for California Native people, and also make a difference for how we actually do tribal relations in California. Like, is this a one and done and then you move on to your next job, or do you carry these relationships and these understandings with you wherever you go, even if you don't work for the state anymore, and you create kind of waves of people who just get it. And so on his first day, we talked about the possibility of him doing an apology. There've been a couple done before. There had been one embedded in a defense budget bill under the Obama administration, which it was in there, but nobody ever talked about it and nobody ever did anything about it, and Obama never really acknowledged it. And so it was like a thing that was there on paper, but is it an apology if you don't actually feel it or hear it? Which I think is obviously a little bit different from what this President Biden did a few months ago as well. And so that had happened, and there'd been some apologies that happened in different states for different massacres, but again, kind of like very discreet apologies, not super open-ended. And so the governor wanted to apologize for everything. And we wanted to make it something that would not just be, something that's just out on paper and then only Native people know about it. We wanted it to be something that felt meaningful, that came from the heart, and that would actually be a commitment to doing better, but also understanding that if you're apologizing within your first 6 months, we don't actually understand the breadth and the enormity of what that apology means, and that any sort of actions to redress those early acts of terrorism against California Native people really had to reflect what the community wanted and what the community thought and what the community experienced. We've seen other efforts where federal and state governments have tried to do what they thought was doing right by California, or not California Native people, sometimes California Native people, but by Native people, and it results in things like removals of kids from their families because they don't think their families are raising them in the way that they should be. We see that it results in, kids not knowing their native languages because people think it's better for them to learn English. And so for us, in that space, it was really important to create kind of a mechanism to hear from all of you about what your experience of, and your ancestors and your great-great-grandparents' experience of that period of time was, how that's still impacting you all today, and what you'd like to see the state do to make up for that. Not just the state making up a bunch of stuff and saying, no, we're good, we already did the thing that we thought we should do. Really saying, understanding the diversity and complexity and nuance of California Indian country, that it is pre-existing all of this stuff, but also has played out in so many different ways based on how people have survived throughout generations. The things that the state and that everyday citizens and that NGOs and that corporations in California can do to start making things right are gonna be a whole different like buffet of things. And some people may need more of one thing because they can't take land into trust and they can't tax, and some people may need more of another thing because their kids aren't, you know, able to take advantage of the UC opportunity programs and things designed for Native people. And so really wanted to create a body of work or a body of listening, a body of work that's informed by listening to California Native communities to really make this feel meaningful. And so that executive order called for a report to come out this year. We had a little bit of delay that we've given ourselves just because we had delays with COVID. We had delays mostly with COVID, but so wanted to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room, but we're anticipating releasing that report this year in September on the 175th anniversary of the state to provide a counter narrative and a path for beginning that healing or continuing that healing moving forward. So like I said, this report is informed by all of the testimony we hear in spaces like this. And we've gone throughout the state, listening to communities like yours to understand what is the harm felt, how do you think the state and or others could do better. And so we acknowledge that the state is one piece of this puzzle, but also that there's a lot of personal accountability and things that people can do, like property owners, like corporations that thrive in California. We're the fifth largest, I let it slip, but I think we're still the 5th largest economy. And you know, we still have major needs in Indian country. And so part of this is to provide that roadmap for the state, for sometimes the feds, because there's certain things that we can only do if the feds allow for it or if they create those funding streams. For individuals, for corporations, for NGOs to all step up in a way that can create an ongoing commitment and relationship to the first people of these lands. And so that, you know, when your kids come of age, so that they're in these circles, they're not having these same conversations, they're thinking about bigger, better things based on those partnerships. And their kids, again, same thing, where we all come from a common understanding that there are people of this land that are the foundation of the culture of this place, and that it's not exclusionary, it's just, you can't erase an entire, like, hundreds of different Native nations just because it makes you uncomfortable, and that it actually makes us stronger and our fabric of society more beautiful, to acknowledge that and to honor it and to find ways for us to, you know, work together to build on this beautiful cultural landscape. So, report and also a documentary that we have partnered with a filmmaker to do, that we hope we will release in tandem with that report on the 175th anniversary, because we know there have been efforts in the past to do this type of thing. We know that, you know, back in the 60s, there was an effort at the state to understand what the needs were for California Indian country, and that's what ended up in the creation of the Heritage Commission. We know that there's been congressional committees that have been put together, like the ASIP report in 1997, and a lot of the conditions are very similar to, or actually worse than they were in 1997, but understanding that the state has different responsibilities and a different role than the federal government. So we really wanted to make sure that with this report, it didn't end up being a report that someone would pick up 20 years later and go like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. I didn't even know about it. So we wanted to have that accessible, easy way of documenting what we were doing here and highlighting what we were doing here, so that when people do see that report, They can watch a 90-minute documentary of this process and what it is and what's going on in California Indian country, and understand why those recommendations matter and why they need to happen now. Right now, like I said, this is the second to last regional hearing, where we hear from all of you for the rest of this time. And all of this testimony gets incorporated into that final report and appendices and recommendations moving forward. So, like I said, we're gonna spend a little bit of time after next week's hearing consolidating a bunch of things. We have subcommittees that are also working on pieces of this report because we know that there are unique needs from different communities, like folks who are not enrolled in federally recognized tribes, like folks who are youth who are thinking about completely different things right now, like folks who are elders who are also thinking about different things right now. So we're gonna spend some time next month kind of consolidating a bunch of things, and then as we get into late spring, we'll be coming out back into community to kind of run those drafts through community before the final release in September. In addition, as we come back out, we're gonna be bringing our iPads to record you for any oral testimony you wanted to submit. We have 13? We have about 13 iPads, and we can either bring them and you all can do them on your own. We can lend them out as long as you bring them back. Because we know that, not every elder is gonna be comfortable talking to me or Loretta, but they might be comfortable talking to their kids. They might be comfortable talking to someone else. Or it might be that they are comfortable talking to us because they don't want their family to hear some of the things they're saying, but want it to be on the record. Those oral histories, we can either add to our process, or you can take those recordings for your own personal use or for your tribe's use. We just ask that whatever you submit to us is the stuff that you want to submit to us, because then it becomes public record and we can't really not have it be public record. So that's why we say we can lend things out to you so that you can record different versions, even if there are things that you want to record for your tribe that include culturally sensitive things, which we wouldn't have to disclose as a state, but there's sometimes inter-family stuff that you want to talk about or more personal details, and we don't want that to be aired for everybody to see. So, am I missing anything? Okay, so that's a very big overview of our process. And typically what we do in these spaces is we then have folks introduce themselves, and at that time, again, it's not just an introduction, it's also when you can testify. And so if you brought anything you wanted to share, you can testify once you have the mic. I did want to have, if Carmen wanted to say anything.
Not at this moment, thank you. I've been notified there's a fire close to my home, so I'm paying attention to that. So you'll forgive me if I'm not quite with you today.
If you need to leave, please feel free to.
Well, it's different times. Fires are interesting. We've come to a time today where we're afraid of fires. And we really shouldn't be. They're probably part of our sacred elements. There's one of our sacred elements. I find them very stimulating. They give a lot of warmth, they purify things, but they create their own energy, and it's very different from the energies of the light here. And they will go where they want to go. And I know our current president that nobody likes, and yet we voted for him, is pointing the finger at California, you're not doing the right thing. But it goes back to Mother Earth and the fact that she is indeed alive, and whatever she seems to think we need to know and learn, she's going to do it in spite of us. So, we get caught up in this conflict, modern times and possessions and all of that, but fortunately my animals are not in the cabin, and they're someplace safe, so if I lose anything again, it won't be the first time. I've been through this once before, but I do want to pay attention to the messages. So I wish everybody well, and please speak up and say what's in your mind and your thoughts, and think good energy. Good energy. We don't need any more of this crapola. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I wish I'd given you the mic for that, but I think you picked it up, so we'll enhance it. At this time, I'd like my partner in crime, Loretta, to introduce herself, and then she is also going to provide testimony a little bit today.
So good afternoon, everyone. As Christina mentioned, I'm her partner in crime. I'm from the Morongo Band of Mission Indians, right down the street. I have cousins that are enrolled in Agua, and I'm just really happy to be near home. I serve as the Deputy Tribal Affairs Secretary and Special Counsel for the Governor's Office. I'm an attorney by trade, so before that I was General Counsel for the Group Tribe up north, and also worked at a law firm in Berkeley representing Indian tribes and clinics and entities. And so, again, thank you to Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians for having us here and for providing the amazing lunch and just being an amazing partner. This is the second time that the tribe has hosted, and so just really appreciate that partnership and generosity. As Christina mentioned, I will provide just a little bit of testimony today and take off my state hat for a second. And photos, yes. So I wear many hats. As a part of this process, I went and bought a camera so I could take higher quality pictures of people that are providing testimony. We release those photos on social media and also plan to incorporate them into the reports. If you do not want me to use your photo for any reason, just pull me aside, let me know, and I'll make sure that doesn't happen. My camera makes a clicking noise, so it is a little distracting when I'm taking the pictures, and I take a lot because I'm still learning. And so just please don't get nervous. I swear I will do my best to not post any really bad pictures of you. I try to get everyone when they're like energized and smiling. So I will be taking some photos, but just let me know again if you don't want us to use your photos for any reason. Pretty flexible with that. And so I grew up on the Morongo Indian Reservation, graduated from Banning High School, and I think growing up, I always really just identified with being from Morongo. Kind of really just didn't have any interest of like, how did we even get here? Until starting this process, like going around the state, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, let me just go back and look at my family tree to figure out like how we actually got to Morongo, because our reservation was established for homeless Indians. And so there are many different people that live there, Cahuilla, Serrano, Cupeño, and so I really just started looking into it. And I've always knew that my grandparents came from Warner Springs, but didn't quite know which one. I thought it was my grandma for the longest time, but it turns out it's my great-grandpa. So to my great-grandfather, Jack Linton was born at Morongo, but his parents came from Warner Springs, Guadalupe, Maria Anderson, and John Linton. So they came from Warner Springs, and a couple of years before the litigation that removed everyone from Warner Springs with the Cupeño Trail of Tears, a couple of years before, they decided that they were gonna take their horses and go to Morongo, and were some of the first enrolled people with allotments at Morongo. And so, and I kind of briefly heard that story as a kid of just like, grandma came and brought all of her horses so that she could come live at Morongo, and traded that so that she could live amongst the Cahuilla people. And so that's my grandpa's side. He was born at Morongo, Jack Linton, and enrolled there. My great-grandmother, Susie Pipa, she was at El Capitan, which was flooded by the San Diego Reservoir. She grew up there. We don't know much about her parents. I was lucky to be at Carmen Lucas's house and found a picture of my grandma in a book, and it had her dad, who I believe was a sheriff. It said his name's Jose, but we don't have much family history on that. But so she grew up there, and I think was removed at like 7 or 8 and went to Sherman. So she was at Sherman for a bit, and then afterwards went back to the reservation and somehow met my grandpa. So Jack Linton was, he was a water master, and worked a lot with the neighboring tribes and built the aqueducts and everything. And so he met Susie in that capacity and ended up bringing her to Morongo, and that's how we ended up there. And so my dad is enrolled, and again, grew up on the reservation. I am a descendant, so really, I think embraced by my community as far as being a descendant, but don't have that full, enrollment, which understand, like, I definitely respect the inherent sovereignty of tribes and determining membership, but really just advocating for all descendants to benefit from this process. And so that's my story, and thank you. Oh, so
How did you end up in the law?
I got dragged into it, to be honest. So Judge Abby. So Judge Abby, I have an auntie from Europe. I was working, so I went to undergrad, didn't know what I was, well, I had like no passion except like going to concerts, which I still do a lot. So lived in, the Valley, went to concerts a lot, got a degree at the same time, and then went to grad school. So I applied for a master's program, went to San Francisco State, and then realized, like, what am I doing getting a master's degree? I didn't want to be a professor or a therapist, which a lot of people in my program were going for. So I ended up dropping out of that master's program about a month in, and was looking for an IHS clinic, because I was like, well, I don't have insurance, and looked at, I found the Friendship House and the Native American Health Center. And just threw my application into Friendship House. They weren't hiring, but I sent my resume over, and they ended up hiring me as an outreach coordinator a couple weeks later, which was really just by chance. So I worked there for about 4 years, and Friendship House, if you're not familiar with it, it's a drug and alcohol treatment center, primarily serving natives in the Mission District of San Francisco. So I did that for a while, and Judge Abby was on the same floor as me. She was a board member, but had an office there. And so we became friends, and I toyed with the idea of law school when I was figuring out what to do in undergrad, and really wanted to do like entertainment law, because again, I like going to concerts and wanted to do something in that realm. But Judge Abby really kind of like steered me. She's like, no, we need Indian attorneys, be a tribal attorney, and that's the story, how it went. Went to law school and have been happy doing this ever since.
All because of conferences, or?
Well, look, Indian casinos have concerts.
Right? Like we were at RinCon yesterday, and I was like, this is the first time I'm in your tribal admin building. Like, I've been here for concerts. Like, I've been to the casino. But yeah, I still fit in concerts where I can.
They seem to be right next to our Truth and Healing Council meeting.
Exactly. So I will plan, like, if there's a good concert in San Francisco, I'll plan something around there. So
What are we doing with this week?
yeah. Or sometimes I find myself in the position of like, I have a concert in Portland, but we were planning this thing in LA, so I'll have to pick and choose like what to do. But yeah, I think that's like the self-care, is just going to concerts. And so again, just really appreciate you all being here, and I think just sharing your story, and in particular, like any recommendations that you have for this whole process would be something that we're really wanting to listen to and have on the record. So we will begin with introductions, unless you have anything else to add. Oh yeah. So here's Jason.
Hello everyone, greetings, and thanks so much to Agua Caliente for having us here. I was walking along that river, and so if I ever ask myself why I'm here, or anybody else asks why I'm here, it's because I want the future to look like this place. I want the places that we build in the future to look like this, and not like what we've been building, with the water, with the openness, with the nature, and just, this is it for me, so really glad to be here today. As I said, my name is Jason McCannell. I work at California State Parks in the Director's Office. I worked with Christina back in the old governor's office, back when Jerry Brown was governor. I was his research assistant, did a lot of different projects. I was also at the California Research Bureau at the State Library, where I worked on tons of reports to the legislature and the governor. So Christina brought me into this to help out with the report process. I'm not writing the report. I don't plan to write a word of it, but just helping put all the pieces together, get everything coordinated, get it into that format that it's actually going to, attract the attention of the audience that we're trying to move with it. So that's my role here. I spend most of my time with the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs. At state parks, my main role has been for the last few years on place names. My training is as a geographer. So when we instituted the Re-Examining Our Past initiative back in 2020, I was already there, but I kind of came in and started to say, look, I can manage this process where we have derogatory and offensive names, or we have a desire to restore native names in the parks. So I've been leading on all those projects for the last few years at parks.
Can you describe the Re-Examining Our Past initiative?
Yeah, backing up a little bit, it was in 2020 at a time of, as we all remember, the George Floyd protests and the sort of moment of racial reckoning with America's more troubled aspects of this country's past. That was happening at that moment, that the governor directed all of his agencies to look into their relationships with underrepresented communities. And this is after the Truth and Healing process started. This is a more general talking about every group of people that have had these kind of experiences of discrimination in the past in California. And then within the Natural Resources Agency, where Parks is located, we had a stronger order from the Secretary, Wade Crowfoot. So a group of us, I would say that our main leader is Leslie Hartzell, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Leslie. She's our Cultural Resources Director, and she's also the tribal liaison for the whole department. And a few others in high-ranking positions at Parks. I would include myself because I'm an add-on supernumerary political appointee. Don't really run anything. But I'm in there using my skills to help out. We're looking at a lot of things across the board that, in terms of not just place names, but interpretation and education, the programming we do, a large amount of sort of glorification of the genocide that still exists in our state historic parks, especially in some of the sites that are most related to it, like Fort Tejon. Just looking at it across the board, here's an example of something that I'm currently working on. I was actually really hoping Patty Garcia would show up today because she lives here, but she didn't. She's a tribal affairs manager. She was asking me about military-related sites within parks, and I was just able to identify 12 properties that are within the state park's boundaries that were originally granted to militiamen who served in the genocide campaigns. So I have a full map of all those. I call them bounty lands, or officially they're military warrants. They're 160-acre parcels that were given as payment for the men who actually did the killings in the genocide. And we have 12 of those, and I think that that's a starting point for our new interpretation. That in those parks, where the land was originally privatized from the federal government on this basis as blood money, that we can talk about it because for all those warrants, we have all kinds of information. We have the name of the soldier, we have the name of the person who bought the land from the soldier, because none of them actually settled on the land, they just sold it right away. There's going to be a history connecting the person who bought that land to the person who eventually donated it or sold it to the state park system. So that's an example of the kind of way that research, the kind of work that I do, can drive new ways of looking at things like state parks and the history of the state. I feel like I'm talking way too long. Quick, Noreen's saying, yeah, keep talking.
That's new information.
It's new information because I'm talking about the work that I did on Monday before I hit the road. I'm not talking about something that's like a long, ongoing process. I had actually done in a former project, I had collected all the bounty lands and turned them into a GIS layer. Somebody just finally had the brilliant idea to intersect those two, and it's like, whoa, okay, we have these in the parks. So brand new news.
Thank you.
And I can even share with folks where those places are if they're interested. Most of them are up in Humboldt County. There's a couple around Turlock. Anyway, So just a couple of other quick things to mention. I am actually currently serving the federal government as a unpaid member of the Advisory Committee on Reconciliation and Place Names in the Department of the Interior. This was created by Secretary Holland in 2022 following her order 3404 that banned the S word from the national map. She created this committee to explore other derogatory names and other opportunities, for the national map to be to have very specifically derogatory names removed. And I was kind of expecting that the committee would be eliminated by now, a week into the new administration, but it hasn't, and apparently we're ongoing and still going to continue to meet, so I'll be watching closely. This incoming administration has a stronger interest in geographic names than I've ever seen before. All I can say is that I'm watching closely, and I'll be reporting back to them, to the Natural Resources Agency, to our California Committee on Geographic Names, as the policies shift and move under the new regime. Research, I am your researcher. I'm not just the council's researcher, I'm the community's researcher. And I know I have some follow-up to do in Tulare County. It was only in December that you asked me to do that. But basically, when I've been to every one of these sessions except for one time when I got really sick, and people come to me with things that they'd like to see documented, or things that they remember from their family history, from their tribal memory, their ancestry, that they really like to see the receipts. And I've been able to go and find a lot of those things. The biggest project that's come out of this has been assembling the documentation of slavery in California. These are papers that were issued by what's called the county courts that no longer exist, that formalized the relationship of apprenticeship between a native person and a settler landowner. And at the time I started, based on someone asking me to look for them, I think I knew where there were 16 of them based on a paper someone had published. I now have about 40-something, representing, I think, 60-something individuals. We have their names. The next step for that, I think it's very important that this stuff be brought to light. It's very hard to read. There are handwritten 19th century documents with that crazy cursive. And I would like to get some help from somebody who's good at reading it. But more importantly, I want to connect with the descendants of these folks, if possible, before we make a public deal with it, because that's a really big part of this process. I could talk about, California genocide based on stuff I read in books for, I could give a 3-hour lecture on it, off the cuff, I'm sure, but that has nothing to do with this, really. I mean, this is about human experience, this is about living people, living memory, and it's about the future as much as it's about the past. Bringing it back to where I started talking about the future. And so it's very important that we lift ourselves out of the academic mindset of just footnotes and footnotes and footnotes. Listen with our hearts as well as with our heads, and try to move California to a place where it finally understands its own history.
Can I ask a quick question before you move on? Sorry.
I was done, so sure. I thought that was a good close. You didn't recognize it?
It wasn't, but I also, this is going to be important for the report and also for how folks think about how we're framing those documents that you're finding. In most of the sources I've read on kind of that slavery piece, they call it unfree labor. Is there a reason why they call it that?
The only thing I can think of is that the term, particularly the term slave, as a way to describe a person is not accepted in discourse, in the most current discourse. You say enslaved persons, you don't say slaves, because it's a condition.
So like in American genocide, he uses the term, unfree labor for, it's like.
What's the term? Because you're turning that way. It's hard to hear.
Unfree labor.
Unfree labor.
Versus slavery.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's more just like, I wonder if it's that there's like a legal definition and that some of this isn't that, and it's like it's like someone paying for someone's to get out of jail, but actually now they're indentured or something?
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. It's a hedge against somebody saying, technically that's not slavery, because like slavery where you actually have a title deed to a person is not what that was.
Called indenturism.
It's an indenture, so, and a lot of them expired after, so it'd say, so you get an 8-year-old kid and says, this person is under your, whatever, under your apprenticeship until they're 35, or something like that. So so people who so I know that Benjamin Madley has encountered a lot of resistance using the word genocide. And some of it comes from people who believe that must be reserved only for the European Holocaust in the 1940s. But it also comes from people who say, well, when you say genocide, it evokes modern technologies, trains, gas chambers, computers, bureaucracy, everything that the Germans brought to their genocide. And just simply because the California genocide was done very often with, knives and swords and very old-fashioned stuff, and not necessarily in that coordinated way, that historians will say, well, it's not really genocide. And in much the same way, if you say slavery, somebody might say, well, technically it wasn't slavery, which is actually the whole reason they made the law to begin with, is so that it would technically not be slavery, because they knew the Emancipation Proclamation was coming, and they passed the law in 1860. So it's basically the same conversation that's going on and on and on and on. What's really slavery?
Yeah, I think it's just, we're gonna need to explain if we pick a term, why we pick the term, so just flagging that.
Yeah, I'll ask Ben about it too next time I talk to him.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we're just going around the circle now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Like we usually do.
Good afternoon, my name is Christy Armendariz. I'm a Agua Caliente tribal member. I'm here just to listen and to learn. It's actually my first meeting, and I'm here supporting my fellow cousin and member, Sean Barnabas. So thank you.
Hachma, Nina Neto Sean Lanovich, Nehenseki, na Penayoka Kuktashka Emiak Eva. So I'm Sean, and yeah, I know we're only doing introductions right now. I hope.
You can share right now. If you wanna go, go.
I can, well, we have less than 2 hours. And we have a whole room of people that need to speak. And so I thank you for sharing, but you took a lot of our time. I mean, you had a lot of good information to share, and I appreciate that, but this is our time right now. We need to speak. I wrote down some notes here that I wanted to say. And, it's already been said, we continue to face genocide on a daily basis. On a daily basis, we continue to face genocide. And that has to stop. Governor Gavin Newsom, he recognized it, but it continues today. And as a society, it just has to stop. Our land was taken from us. Our people were killed. We were talking about that. But we don't receive rent. We don't receive allowances for any of that. And not that I want that, but our land has been taken, and along with that, a lot was taken from us. Our heritage, our livelihood, our way of life, our language, our traditional ceremonies and practices. We never surrendered, and we've always fought for what is ours, and most importantly, we have always fought to maintain our land rights as Indian people. I mean, but Dad always said, you cannot give an inch, the government will take a mile. And when you think about that, as soon as we give in just a little bit, the government takes all of that from us and moves forward and forgets about us. We have to maintain the status quo of who we are, and we just can't give it up. We can't give up anything. And so, you know, it's important that those of us that showed up are here today, and that we're in, and that we do speak up. Because our land was taken from us, because our lives were taken from us, you know, we face trauma every day in our own communities. A lot of our family members, our cousins, our relatives, they have a lot of health issues, and this goes on daily. People are losing their lives. They're losing their limbs. Talking about this report that's supposed to be done, you know, at the end of the meeting next week, then there's going to be this report, and so all of our words that we say are going to be all turned around by scholars, by people we do not even know. I don't like that. I think whatever we say here, whatever those committees submit, that's what should be the final product right there. There should not be any difference. I don't want things changed or altered. They are not going to say the same thing that I said. They are not going to say the same thing that those committees put all their hard work and effort into it. I was part of the Status and Identity Committee, and you know, that's a hard committee to be on. There's a lot of challenges that we all face, but being unrecognized, what does that even mean? You know, not recognized by the federal government, not having access to land, not having access to the healthcare services, you know, not being recognized by your own tribal peers. The government, you know, is killing us from within. The government is dividing us and continues to divide us. And we cannot buy into that. And I'm worried about for the next 4 years under President Trump, he's going to do what has always been done to Native people, which is, you know, we're not going to get the help that we need. There's the question of identity and ways that Native Americans remains at the forefront. And the government is putting the Native American policy with this system under the wire, and we're under threat right now. We are under attack, and we've been under attack, but it's even more so right now. That's how I feel. And many Indian families and individuals continue to be on the welfare system. They shouldn't have to be. We had a thriving, fruitful life. And the foods that we go out and gather, and the meals that we prepare from those foods sustained us, they nourished us, they gave us everything that we needed. Creator God gave us everything that we needed. All the medicines, all the instruments that we needed. Creator gave us love. But when we were shipped off to those boarding schools, we were told that we didn't matter, that we were subservient to the people in power. We were taught that it doesn't matter who we are or where we come from. But as a matter of fact, it's just the opposite. I know I'm from Agua Caliente. I am from right here. And I feel so strongly connected here that these are my roots. This is where I come from. And everything, who I am and where I'm going and where I've been, is because it's right here. That water flows right underneath of us. And when I get into that water, it goes into my pores, up and through my body, and it pushes out, it radiates out. That's who I am. That power comes from that water. I want our relatives, I want our youth to understand about the importance of the sacredness of our springs, the power of the springs, the Indian medicine, that power, that Eva is super, super strong. And it doesn't come from the Indian people. The Creator gave it to us. And we've been, so a lot of us have been taught not to understand that, not to believe that. We've been taught, that there's this other way, this Christian way. And you know, I'm a Catholic, but I follow my traditions. I love my traditions. There's only one creator, Amna. And Amna is the greatness of all things. Excuse me. You know, when we talk about money, I've heard that there's been a lot of talk about money in the Truth and Healing Council, and casinos have an $82 billion industry. And those casinos have helped their individual tribal communities. But overall, there's so many, we're still hurting. We're still hurting. We're still fighting for our unrecognized relatives. We're fighting for the to stop the lithium mining down at the Salton Sea. We want to protect all of our cultural sites. We want to protect our children. We want our children to learn our language, learn our history. And when we talk about teaching these things within the tribe, and then the tribe says, no, you know, we need to learn language, learn the English language first, learn the politics and everything else. I don't know, there's a lot of fighting within each tribe, and part of that comes from this divide and conquer the tribal people. This is that genocide that I'm talking about. And when reservations were established, you know, they were established far, far away from others, from other communities. Fortunately, right here at Agua Caliente, we never had to move like a lot of other reservations, a lot of other tribal people. They had to move away to a new home, but we've always been right here at Seki. And the relatives to the south at Kupa, you know, they had their land right there, and then they were later on, you know, told that they had to get out of there. You know, but that had always been their home, and that shouldn't be. And our people are scattered around. And when in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, when the government was making these charts of, what's the name of that chart? The per capita rolls. You know, there was a lot of people that were not here, or not at your own reservations. And so they never got to be a part of that. Their names were never put on those rolls. And so those families continue to be unrecognized today. And it hurts. It hurts. Some of them are doing okay, you know, but there's an acceptance. You know, being accepted by your relatives. It's like there's a lot of people that don't always accept everyone for who they are, and if they come from somewhere else, or if they didn't come right from the reservation, then, you know, they're looked at as different. We were wards of the court, and we could not make our own decisions for ourselves in the legal system. So we lost our land, we lost our culture, we lost our identity. When the reservations were set up, there was no money. There was no development. There was no infrastructure like you see in the other surrounding white communities. Tribes that have casinos now, they're able to build infrastructure. But there's a lot of communities that don't have that. My relatives east of here, down at Torres Martinez, they're suffering a lot. They have, with the water system, the water's contaminated on the reservation. And so they don't have the infrastructure to build that up. They're always looking for a way to help themselves, but they need a team of people. They need a planning department. They need lawyers. They have a lot of people that do care and do love, but they need these other people with these other resources and these other talents, and they're not set up that way yet. And they'll get there. It's just gonna take a little bit longer. So we need to support them. We need to support our brothers and sisters around us. Build up infrastructure on the smaller reservations. They need it. You know, especially, you know, there's still some places that don't have electricity, that don't have water, clean water. Today, you know, I asked the federal government to stop telling us who we are. And we want our destiny to be in the hands of our own, so we can tell our own story of who we are. I don't want someone else, like a prescribed scholar, to rewrite my own story. And when we talk about a virtual library, one place that has all of our information, wouldn't that be wonderful, so that we could all go to a place and there's a story of our grandmothers, our grandfathers, and we all know how to access that site. We can go there. We can go there every day, 24 hours a day. Wouldn't that be nice? But we don't have any place like that. Our information is scattered around the country, scattered around the world. Some of our artifacts, some of the ethnographies, stored in museums in Germany, archives in Mexico City. That's ridiculous. We should have access to all of these sites, even the sites that are even near here, like at the Huntington Library. So if I wanted to go to the Huntington Library to get information to read, I wouldn't be able to go. I would be able to go myself personally, because I have a PhD, but if someone else was trying to go, they wouldn't be allowed to go. That's ridiculous. Every one of these Indian people here should be able to have access to go to those archives and do their own research. And our land is our most important, but our tribal sovereignty is a power that we have always had. Creator Amna gave us the authority to be the caretakers of our own people, the land, the animals, and plants, and the water. And on Cahuilla, and Cahuilla means masterful and powerful of the mind. And what that means, we believe that we make our own destiny. We make our own destiny. But when the government keeps stepping in, when California keeps stepping in and hinders who we are, rewrites our own stories, that steps on our authority. We should be able to make our own decisions amongst our own selves and with our own people. And I want to say that our songs, our bird songs were almost lost years and years ago. And it was through Robert Levi, Alvino Siva, and Uncle Anthony Biff Andreas. They started singing these songs, but there was a revival. Uncle Biff, he had a ranch here at the south end of town, and he would invite people from all over to come and sing, and there would be hundreds of people singing all night long. There would be these games, there would be food, there would be sharing of songs and stories. We rebuilt structures, learning the language. And that revival started right here at Agua Caliente, at Andreas Ranch. And so I was a part of that movement, and I'm very proud that started right here. But it was in 1969 when everything really changed for California Indian people. Before 1969, we were invisible. But in 1969, Native people took over Alcatraz, and that brought attention. And even though that all the tribal people from other parts of the country received recognition, and their faces were plastered all over the papers, but we had tribal people from here, from south, in all the directions that participated in that occupation. And they believed, they wanted to get word that we mattered, And let everyone know, no one can ever take that away from you. As Indian people, we are the caretakers of this world. And we have a beautiful healing that's inside of us. And nobody can ever take that away. So we need to look at our roots and understand who we are and where we come from. That's our strength right there. That's our identity of who we are. And we need to pull on those roots, on our tribal identity, to move us forward. Achima.
My name is Lilani Landeros. I'm from Agua Caliente, Band of Cahuilla Indians, and I'm just here to listen to everybody.
The three of us here are cousins. My name is William Pink, or Willie Pink. I'm Agua Caliente Cahuilla from Paula. I served as the Executive Secretary for the Native American Heritage Commission under the first Brown. Didn't like the second one that much. Also served as a member of the California Desert Conservation Area Advisory Committee, and although Carmen's been a while. And then served as vice chairman for Paula, pair chairman as Paula, and business manager as well for Paula when I was involved with tribal government down there. So I've got a lot of experience. I've had the great opportunity of traveling up and down the state for the governor's office and meeting with almost every tribe within the state of California, visiting every reservation. So I have all that experience within me, and I saw a lot of the pain that existed out there. And we got to where we spent a lot of time fixing things. Auburn Rancheria was terminated. The family there was going to be evicted. I allowed one of my staff members to begin to lobby with the county to stop the eviction, and the county finally did. They granted them life estate on the property and stopped charging them the property taxes. So when you speak up and take action, things can be done. Auburn Rancheria today is prospering because of that action. You know, it eventually led to legislation which we recognize them again, and they do have a casino, and you know, just things have gotten better for them. But it took those old people to teach the young people how to fight. And that was one of the worst things serving with the commission for me, was all the energy was coming from the older people, the people that were tired. And the younger people were sitting back and letting the old people do all the work. You know, and it was kind of difficult to watch at times. But I see it now where there's a lot more younger energy involved in today. And so, anyway, I do have my list of things. My grandfather was the last survivor from the removal of Warner Springs as far as being a Kupa Indian. There are other people who claim to be the last survivors from the removal, but they were not Cupeño. And that, as I'm serving now as a tribal historian for the Agua Caliente Cupeño, and as I've done archival research, I learned one thing that I didn't understand what my grandfather used to say, was that we didn't have to move. And I finally learned what he meant by that, is that we actually had our reservation we established in 1901, and because of Lummis, and he wanted all the headlines, forced us into part of the removal when we didn't have to be removed because we had a reservation again. Secretary of Interior reinstated our reservation in 1901. So there was no reason to remove us. And then again, going back to governors, it was Governor Downey was the one who purchased the land and forced the eviction. So yes, governors do need to apologize. And so with that, even in taking in the hot springs, he had to do the resurvey 3 times before he took in the hot springs and claimed it as part of his property, when in fact it wasn't. And the Agua Caliente village actually sat outside the boundary of the reservation, therefore we should have never been part of the eviction because we weren't part of the court order. It only pertained to those Indians within the Warren Ranch boundary. We were outside the boundary, yet they still removed us. So we used to sit around when I was a child at my grandparents' table, and my grandfather would be out working or doing other things, and they would talk about him. And one of the things was, is it possible for somebody to die from a broken heart? And they would talk about Geronimo. They would talk about various events in California, and they were concerned about their father, that he may die of a broken heart. Geronimo died from a broken heart. So, and to his dying day, all he wanted to do was go back to his home. That's all he wanted. And I'm still here fighting the same fight. It's the same thing, and we're not allowed to go back home. You know? So now my list of grievances. And what I'm hoping will come out of this is that besides the report of the actual action taken, because we've done this before. I remember in the 70s going in and testifying before the legislature about the education problems in California, the housing problems in California with respects to Indians, and none of it ever goes anywhere. You know, meeting with Parks and Recreation Advisory Committees, never going anywhere. I'll talk about that later. But my number one issue right now is taxes. Okay? I am a criminal for attempting to buy something and not pay the taxes. I live on my own Indian land within Pechanga Reservation, and I shouldn't have to be paying those sales tax on certain items. Yet the State Franchise Tax Board says, no, you can't do that because you're a criminal for even thinking about it. You know, Home Depot used to work with us, Best Buy used to work with us. State Franchise Board stepped in and took those privileges away and threatened them that they would have to pay the taxes if they didn't collect them. You know, and what's so difficult about it? And every time we get into that discussion, they just make, you know, the hurdle higher. And each time we have to do something more in order to get those tax exemptions. So if I go to Home Depot and I want it delivered to my address, item might cost me $25, but it's going to cost me $50 for delivery. Why can't I deliver it to myself? And if they say it's because I'm going to cheat them out of something I'm buying for somebody else, then that's a crime if I do that. Then prosecute me. But don't make me a criminal before the crime's committed. That's not due process. That is not due process. If we're guaranteed the right of due process as being an American citizen and a citizen of the state of California, yet this continues to go on. And it's got to stop. I mean, I can go get a fishing license, you know, and carry that. So why can't the State Franchise Tax Board, you know, verify my residency, verify that I'm Indian, and maybe get a little sticker like they put on license plates and put it on my forehead, okay? That way we can walk in the store and not be criminal. But when I walk into that store at Home Depot, Best Buy, Lowe's, I'm a criminal by saying I shouldn't be paying taxes. And that's really wrong. And that's something that can be fixed. Doesn't make you wait for a report, you know? And I know you guys know that's true. The other thing is Parks and Recreation and the state museums issues. I mean, how many times we've been up and down that yo-yo? You know, now Parks is coming out again and we're doing the Lake Paris thing, and this is like the 5th time. Where we get in there, we do the planning, then all of a sudden the project goes away. And we expect the same thing to occur this time too. And the other thing that's more insulting than this, they brought in non-Indian consultants who are going to develop the museum based on our word. And we're sitting there thinking, we're the experts here, and we're giving all of our information, and they're getting paid, but we're not. You know, again, another insult. Indians aren't worth a dime. You know, well, we're gonna hire some consultants, which they won't tell us how much they get paid, but based on the way that they dress, probably pretty good, okay? We had a proposal for a state Indian museum back in 1980. There was an allocation of $5.6 million that was going to go to build a new state Indian museum. That was a lot of money back in those days. Nowadays, the comparable would be $200 million. But we could have had a new state Indian museum, but instead they diverted money over to the Railroad Museum. They took our money away and put it in the Railroad Museum. You know, so it's these same kind of things that keep on going like this. The Antelope Valley Museum, they've lost most of their stuff because of CalNAGPRA. They don't have any artifacts in there anymore. A lot of that stuff is being returned to the various tribes. So again, we won't have that representation. You know, are we doing it to ourselves? I don't know. You know, is CalNAGPRA necessary? I think there needs to be more questions, more hearings, more studies as to what can we display then. You know, and so it's just that continuing thing. You got Chaucer Indian grinding rock, there's Suve up in, in Patrick's Point area. You know, other tribes that have been very successful, the Miwok, you know, Bill Franklin and Chaucer, where they have a good museum, they have a good village display, they also have a roundhouse, which are allowed to practice their religion, you know, and work with people in common. One of the things I'm asking at Lake Paris is give us some land. Give us some land, let us put up a demonstration village. You know, it is possible. And then I hear later that the consultants were talking behind my back, so we have no intention of doing those things. But they'll sit there and tell me to my face, oh, that's a good idea. You know? And more than likely, this project isn't gonna go anywhere again, just like all the other ones. Wait and see what happens. Parks and Recreation, I'll give you an example of where things were with the parks back in 1980. We were able to achieve reburial. They had 872 human remains in possession, which we got Pete Dangerman to agree to return them to their tribes. That turned into a complete disaster. But we did get 6 remains returned to Patrick's Point. When I went in there to get them, Fritz Riddell was the lead archaeologist. He and the other archaeologists said, here, if you can pick out the bones, you can remove them. So they brought me out these trays of human remains and left it to me to pick out which were the human remains with other artifacts. This happened, okay? What they did tell me, and I saw what they'd done, they didn't think I knew enough about bones, but they dumped seal bones in with the human bones. And if you know anything about seal bones, they're very close to human bones. And they were angry because I went through and sorted the two. I put the seal bones over here and the human bones over here, and they got absolutely angry with me because I was able to do that. These were the kinds of things that we faced. You know, but still we have 250,000, 350,000 plus human remains still sitting in universities. For what? You know, a lot of them without provenance, they mean nothing. You know, why are our ancestors there? Are we being haunted by this? And yes, we're the ones who pay the price. You know, because we have to do something. We just can't sit back and say we can't do anything. We've been fighting this battle for how long? And I've said this before, some of you probably heard me say this, but my very first project was Morgan Hill in Santa Clara Valley. When I went to work for the governor's office, we went over there and there was over 2,000 human remains being exposed in this housing project. So we went to the coroner's office. This was Bill Franklin and myself. And we went to the coroner's office and we asked him to intervene, and he said, I don't have to intervene. And I said, why? And then he stepped back from the counter, and I realized why he stepped back from the counter was so I couldn't punch him. And he said, the laws are for humans and Indians aren't humans. That's what the coroner told me to my face in Santa Clara County. That it was none of his business because Indians weren't human. This is 1980. You know, and there's more things out there like that. You know, the other thing I'm gonna ask for, and I gotta bring this up, and I was told this afternoon that I'm long-winded. She was right, okay. There's gotta be something done about phony Indians. I am tired of phony Indians getting all the credit for everything that our ancestors suffered for. You know, Iron Eyes Cody was not Indian, but at least he didn't harm us. There's people out there who harm us every day pretending that they're Indian and sit there and act like they've suffered so much and their ancestors suffered when they're not even Indian. And it should be a crime. It should be a crime. People coming in changing our language, pretending that they're ancestors and that they know the language and they're this and that. But they're not. They're not Indian. And you know they're not Indian, but how do you stop them? They go out and they get a following. Some people do it as shamans. Probably one of the more famous ones was Rolling Thunder, who was an Indian. And he had quite a following at one time. But it should be made a crime. These people need to be stopped. Because they hurt our ancestry. They hurt our ancestors by being pretend Indians. You know, Buffy St. Marie, she didn't harm us. She really thought she was Indian. You know, but there's these other people, and I won't name names, and they're very close. You know, even one of them was business manager for Torres Martinez for a while, was a pretend Indian. One of them went on to be director of the Pacific Regional Office, Bureau of Indian Affairs, as a pretend Indian. You know, I couldn't get in to see Assemblyman if I didn't have the proper issue, but they let this goofy guy who was Italian, Jonathan Swift Turtle-Ado, go into an assemblyman's office, cleared the assemblyman's desk off, spread sand all over it, put a pipe down on it, and they listened to him, but they wouldn't listen to the real Indians. You know? These people seek that stage, they seek that opportunity. We don't have that in us. You know, and I'll say that is that we have a tendency to be quiet when the bad things are being spoken. And we allow those bad things to be spoken because we're too polite. Me, I open my mouth, okay? I've learned that long ago, you gotta open your mouth, you have to say something. Because it just goes on. We get deprived and set back years to try and fix those things of where we're wrong by these phony Indians. The other thing coming up is the Native American Heritage Commission tribal designation program that they're engaged in. You know, I was the one who coined the phrase most likely descendant when I wrote the burial legislation. I did it with Bill Keir. And when we got the burial legislation passed under John Garamendi at the time, he was state senator, the consideration there was that, and what we worked with most tribal councils were not interested in what the Heritage Commission was doing. Carmen, you know that, your dad knew that. He had, you know, been terminated. You know, the reservation of Laguna had been terminated. But your father and you were more interested in preservation and protection of the cultural resources out there than say anybody from Via Pipe or anybody from Manzanita was. You know, so these were most likely descendants, not federally recognized, according to the feds, not Indians. Now you've got the Heritage Commission proposing to do the same damn thing, taking away the rights of individual Indians, because they want to lean more towards federally recognized tribes. And this is absolutely wrong. MLD, most likely descendant, goes back to the descendants, and the same thing with the 1928 roll didn't mean you had to be a member of a tribe, but you were a descendant from somebody that was an Indian that was living in 1852. So if you're a descendant of that person, you are most likely descendant with respect to your tribal area. You know, and these are the people that need to be recognized. But you got a genocider on the Native American Heritage Commission, and her name's Sarah Dutchke. She put together a scheme that caused a disenrollment of 172 people in Paula. She harmed her client. She took an attorney contract without approval of the tribe, worked with the chairman, and set together a scheme for disenrolling the Britton family. 172 members were unlawfully disenrolled because of that person. She should be removed from the Heritage Commission. She should be disbarred for harming her clients. But when Indians hurt Indians, it makes it even worse. And it's just too bad that we have that. But people need to speak up on this Heritage Commission's efforts to only work with federally recognized Indians when those ancestors in the ground, there are huge gaps in California where there are no federally recognized tribes. From Los Angeles all the way up to San Francisco, tell me about one federally recognized tribe besides Santa Ynez. Who's the most likely descendants there? You're gonna give Santa Ynez complete control between the Bay Area and Los Angeles Harbor? You know, it's stupid. It's just plain stupid. But there are genociders on the Heritage Commission right now, and it's unfortunate. Non-gaming tribes, and Sean spoke a little bit to this. We can't forget the non-gaming tribes. You know, they need help. They're in remote locations, that's why they're a non-gaming tribe. They'll never get the commerce needed to support such a facility. But there are other means, at least there should be redirection of federal funds, state funds, or whatever, to bring more support to these communities and bring them up out of the poverty that they're in today. And I think the state can play a role in this. They used to, when Ben Delaney was director of, was it the California Indian Assistance Program? You know, they would do grant writing for these tribes. They would provide administrative assistance, and there needs to be more of that. And it needs to be funded also by the gaming tribes themselves. So that needs to be taken care of. The other thing is, I went to apply for a fishing license the other day, and this has always been an issue because we did the fishing studies when I was with the Heritage Commission. And so if I want a free license from the state of California, I have to declare that I'm a destitute Indian. So in order to enjoy my fishing rights, I have to say I'm a destitute Indian. You know, we should be able to get free licenses either way. It's our fish. You know, it's our fish. And we have to pay the high fee for it to go fishing. And if we don't want to pay the fee, you have to say that you have no money. Basically nothing. The other thing I want to talk about is the history of the flooding out of tribal communities. Shasta flooded a couple of rancherias. The Lake Henshaw flooded out the village of San Jose, flooded their cemetery. And so a lot of these state water projects affect Indian people directly. Grindstone Rancheria is in the path of future coming projects for the state water project. They will one day be inundated. So there has to be a secondary look at some of these state water projects. Is, do they always have to affect Indian people? You know, I heard stories, and some people say, well, it's just a story, and other people say, it was me, it was true. I woke up in the morning, went to work, when I came home, my house was bulldozed. And this was for the construction of Shasta Dam. That Indian people went to work, and when they came home, they didn't have a house anymore. The other is the theft of Rattlesnake Island. And where this kind of gets twisted around is because we have, you know, state will come back and say, well, that's a federal problem. But it's the state citizens that are causing the harm against Indian people. It's the state citizens that are taking things from Indian people. So you can't come back around and say, well, it's just a federal problem. Those state citizens need to be governed. They need to be criminalized. And those things need to stop. So thank you for your time. Yes, I am long-winded. Appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Morgan. I'm a citizen of the Muskogee Creek Nation. I'm also a tribal liaison for the Inland Empire Health Plan. We serve as members in the San Bernardino and Riverside County. And I'm very humbled. I'm very excited to be here today because I believe that the first step we need to take is to listen. So we need to pay attention and hear the needs of the community. And so I'm just privileged and I'm humbled to be here today.
Hargam Nagan Joy Williams, I'm a member of the Kern Valley Indian community. I'm a tribal vice chairman, and I just want to thank the gentleman and everyone who shared. Not much I could add to that. Thank you for letting us be guests here on your land. In my bag right here, I have a couple of things that I left, and that to evacuate the Eaton fire. I have my BIA, all the white man documents that say I'm Indian, and my allotments that we have. And the gentleman down here, Vincent, we were talking, everything happens by accident. We're sitting eating. He has relatives in the Kern Valley that we're trying to find their allotments. So of course we're gonna be able to connect. But I just wanna also have ancestors that come from the island of Pima, which you may know as Catalina. And as we're talking about the Bay of San Francisco, is my third great grandfather is a descendant of the island of Pima, removed to the LA Plaza Church, which you may know as Loretta Street, sent to San Gabriel, then to Tejon, where he was made to do this unfree, whatever you want to call it, labor, slavery is what it is, at the Tejon Ranch in Sebastian, where they're building that big casino right now, the Hard Rock. And he fled up to the Kern River, where my people are at, the Kern Valley, the Kwaisanua people, and took him in. And I say all this to say this because I am a most likely descendant, but I've called the Heritage Commission many times and tried to get information and never got a call back. And maybe I will now because it's on video. But you know, I just want to thank them for all they're saying, and I just want to share something about genocide. According to the United Holocaust Memorial Museum, here's the criteria for genocide. Killing members of the group. 2, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. 3, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, in whole or in part. 4, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. And 5, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. I also come from that category. I was removed, kidnapped by the Kern County Sheriffs from my yard, from my great aunt, who was full-blooded Nua, spoke our original Kwaizu language, and I never made it home, and was put in a white foster home. And I think that we as natives qualify under all 5 of those criteria for genocide. So whether anyone wants to admit it or not, it is genocide. And it is a Holocaust of native people as we went from 30,000 or 300,000, probably more closer to 1 million people, to about 15,000 during this extermination that was done on California native people. So just gonna say one thing because I know that we have a lot of people that still wanna talk and I wanna make room for space for people who are actually from these lands, is we heard about this process of the recommendations and all that. And I'm not here in no way talking about oppression Olympics. I just know that what came from Gavin Newsom's lips to what's translated to resources for this project, or whatever we're gonna call it, to the consultants, to the paler documentarians who's documenting this documentary, is that not the same amount of resources wasn't put into this that was put into the Black Reparations Task Force. And both of those things need to be funded fully, because they're both the original sins of this colony, is the slavery of and stolen people, and then the stolen lands and slavery of our people here in California. And I'll just say that to say that I believe the governor in the state of California, I'll use this last analogy. I feel like the state of California robbed our house. You said that people got flooded. They came in and robbed our house. Now they're coming back trying to help us figure out who robbed it and help us find the stuff that was stolen. And the whole time they're the ones that robbed the house. And that you have the means to return all that stuff plus interest. And I feel that's what we really need. But I also want to thank all the efforts of everyone. I know you guys have limited resources here. I've heard the stories of the years before about these sessions. They weren't as smooth, but having a great meal and having the folks on hand, the mental health facilitators is great. And I just want to applaud those efforts that you all are doing right now. So thank you so much for that. No need to prod that, but to talk about how do we build and go stronger forward.
I don't like going after him. Hamiratam, my name is Pamela Villasenor. I'm a citizen of Fernandinho Tataviam Band of Mission Indians from northern LA County. There's a lot resonating with me that's been shared by our previous speakers. My people were the builders and enslaved at Mission San Fernando. That's San Fernando Mission Reyes. But what I really hope, besides the many things that come out of this report, is that it's a framework of resilience in our agency over the centuries. I know we are sharing these painful emotions, and I could hear the pain from this elder, recounting his grandfather's story and all that pain, but he's here because of his grandfather. We're all here because of our grandparents, and yes, the younger generations do need to step up. I want to make sure that how we exist, we explain it as an origin story. So my people had Indian reservations in LA County under the Mexican governor, and that was very unique. We were the only Indian reservations under Mexican control in that region, but they were all taken by the US when they invaded, and we lost our last lands in 1890s, and because of that, never became federally acknowledged during the Mission Relief Act. So all these other tribes down here named Band of Mission Indians, we were supposed to be one of them, but nobody knew the judge was corrupt and going into business with the plaintiff, Senator McClay, who would later, both of them, start a land and water company. So we were never going to win that case. We're never going to get recognized because of that. But it's not the end of the story. Despite our civil disobedience, despite us losing, we continue to organize. And after the civil rights era, in spite of state laws that were meant to destroy us and all of us, we looked to other state laws that were vehicles for us to build. And that is how we created our first nonprofit. It today is a Native American social service nonprofit in Los Angeles named Pacu Cultural Community Services. We provide more than $250,000 on the streets in direct housing assistance in LA County, not only to our tribe, but the many Native Americans who call LA their home, which happens to be the largest Native population of any county in the country. And what's amazing for me is my ancestors, my family have created this nonprofit. My grandfather was on the board and I'm the executive director, the CEO of that nonprofit today. That is a story of resilience that we continue to build. But we should not have these new bills come in that then try to railroad us and change the system, like what was mentioned today at the Heritage Commission. That's people gaming the system, weaponizing state laws to hurt the ways in which we can use vehicles to help one another, to build our tribes, and to build all the tribal entities and the future innovation for these younger generations that we're saying we want to support and uplift. We can't take away all their vehicles to change. Their vehicles for the future. And I am hoping that this report is able to push the resiliency, the innovation of our people and all of the agency that we want these younger generations to have. And it's gotta come with strong, legislative purview that what is out there and what should not be part of the legislative agenda that weaponizes state law to hurt tribes and hurt Native Americans. I just wanna follow up with what Joey said. I'm appreciative to all the Cahuilla people out here and allowing us to have space and hosting this wonderful event. And I hope that you all know how grateful I am to be in your space and to be hosted by all of you as well as the state. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marisa Valdez-Yeager. I am part of California State University San Bernardino. Tribal Relations is within our Office of Government, Tribal, and Community Relations, and I am here to listen, but also thank our host today, Agua Caliente, who is also be our guest with our Palm Desert campus of Agua Caliente, but also for our San Bernardino campus. So our door is always open to all of you, and I hope you can come across our doorsteps at any time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wedo Nunes. I've been listening, and I agree, like with the Heritage Society, that when Indians are involved, they're just like people. The thing that gets me is the double-edged sword of sovereignty, and that Indians can hurt other Indians, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. I would look at this as, well, control your own house, okay, but Indians that are disenrolled have no recourse. And Indians that are seeking tribal federal recognition have no recourse, because those very cousins or family attempt to keep them out. And there should be a mechanism that's available that does not allow the backroom deals, the political contributions, the things that make it difficult for tribes to assert their validity. I mean, I was Indian. I'm not Indian anymore because I got disenrolled, so I'm not going to mention my tribe or my past tribe, just because I don't hold a grudge. But I do know that human nature is human nature. And what I would hope that anyone that comes away from this meeting understands is that we have a responsibility to live the best way that we can. And the people that are harming others, you know that they're not, but the better self should be the person that's able to tell them without being upset with them that you're doing wrong and you need to stop. And that goes for the Native American heritage. Somebody said Dinsky, I forget her name. People in power that turn a blind eye. I do believe in the Bible, and I do believe that there is recompense for these people that do these things. They may not know it now, but it's coming.
I want to jump in real quick, and part of our respectful engagement is that we don't name names, and so we're not telling you to not talk about it, but if, I know it happened and I didn't want to interrupt. Well, I didn't want to interrupt his testimony, so I'm going to edit it later, but not too much, so don't, if you get mad, tell me that you're mad, but it'll be just to block out names.
I apologize, and I'm glad I didn't say the person's name correctly. That made nobody else.
And I'm not trying to call you, I'm just saying in future, if this continues to be a topic of discussion, you can talk about it, but we don't want to name names.
The fact is that there's injustice because of power. And that's basically what the Indian person that's poor does not have.
If I'm lying, she can sue me. You know, I mean, we're here to talk about, and if I can point a finger at a real culprit,
why not?
Then I've done that. And now you're saying, we're gonna modify this, we're gonna do this. And I don't blame you, I understand that. But at the same time, if I'm lying, she has every opportunity to sue me for defamation. Because I'm telling the truth. I'm not afraid.
My name is Vincent. I'm also from the Agua Caliente Copenhagen tribe, the Paul Reservation. I came here because I saw you guys' flyer in Morongo, and I wanted to bring in attention to a couple of things. One is the boarding school trauma, and one of them is, and the other one is the cemetery in St. Boniface. I wanted to go up there to measure to put a new stone and a new cement for my great uncle, and it was gone. This stone was gone, and all the children who were buried there, all their stones are gone. There's only one that's tipped over, that's broken in half, of one of the children that was buried there. And what makes it more worse is that the only stones that are not disturbed are the employees who died and the priests that were from the boarding schools. There is in perfect condition, except for the children that were buried and died there. My great grandfather and one of my great uncles ran away from St. Boniface in the early 1900s after their brother died. And they escaped from there and jumped on the train in Banning and were separated as, 14, 13 years old. Children jumping on a train just to get away from the boarding schools. But I reached out to every organization that I can think of because I wanted to get permission to go on the cemetery and not get bothered. I want to get permission to whoever was in charge of the cemetery. But I went to the city of Banning, and supposedly when the boarding school closed, the city of Banning took possession of the land and they owned it. So so back in the 1970s or earlier, the city of Banning put a marker up stating that it was a historical mission, and that's gone a long time ago. So they gave me a name of a man named Francisco Ramos, who was an historian, who was doing interviews with a lot of the surviving or the ones who were still alive that went to the boarding schools. And he gave me a lot of information of what was going on there. The land was purchased by a company, Arrowhead Estates. It was called the Arrowhead Estate Project. And the owners were from Newport Beach, Vintage Stone Eagle LLC. They acquired the land in 2012. They were planning to build a bunch of houses on that land, which that land encompassed the boarding school. Back in the 1980s, I guess they ceded that portion that the cemetery was into the Morongo tribe. So they were supposed to put an iron fence, but they ended up putting only a chain link fence. So I spoke to the manager of Banning, and his comment was that he was satisfied with the efforts that was done to preserve the location. So I also did some more research, and back in 2003, Loma Linda-based company called Tierra Geoscience Radar developer conducted some ground inquiries, and they found a lot of bodies outside of the fence of the cemetery. So I went back out there to look, and sure enough, I started digging through bushes and trees, and I found other children buried. So in my efforts to try to get some help, I reached out to the Secretary of Interior, Holland. There was a meeting at Sherman in regards to the trauma boarding schools, and I forgot some other things. So I reached out to her and I told her what was going on, and she said to reach back to her because she was there to try to help us, I guess, with the trauma of boarding schools. And to this day, I keep calling her, and I keep getting the secretary, and the secretary tells me, well, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do that to get a hold of her. So I reached out to our assemblyman, James Ramos, and the same thing, I couldn't get through him. I reached out to our state senator, Ochoa Vogue, and they promised to help me, and I still haven't got anywhere with this thing. So at this point, it's sad to see that a cemetery of our ancestors that are buried there, it's getting to the point where it's breaking my heart, and I don't know what to do. I was at UCR years ago where I heard a story that one of the first boarding schools in Paris, they built a warehouse, a big giant warehouse on top of the cemetery for the children there in Paris. So I don't want this to happen here. So I heard rumors not too long ago that somebody was trying to remove the bodies from that cemetery. And I'm thinking, you know, what am I gonna do? You know, what can I do? I need help. I need some help from people. Where do I go? What do I do? You know, but that's what I'm going through there, trying to get put the stone back for my great uncle there. I don't know what he died of, but my grandfather and his brother ran away. It must have been for some reason, because they didn't want to die either. But the other thing is the boarding schools. My family goes way back where they removed the children, I don't know, in the early 1800s or 1890s. So I'm not too sure, but it was pretty far back. So they took all my great-grandparents, my great-grandfather's siblings, all went to the boarding schools from Paris, St. Boniface to Sherman. And they were separated as children. So we were raised in this, being non-Indian. So as a teenager, I ran away from my foster home because I was in a foster home all my life. Found out my ancestors come from the reservation and stuff, so I went looking for them. And of course, I'm not accepted because I wasn't raised on the reservation. And I'm like, but I belong to you guys, no? I don't know. I know that people on the reservation suffered a lot back in the days when they didn't have electricity, you know. I mean, I remember when I moved back to the reservation, I remember lining up behind a truck getting commodities, you know. In those days, we used to get rice and beans and cheese, and I think the cheese was the most valuable thing for us at that time. But our family also endured so much hardship in the boarding schools, you know. Yeah, you know, I would have loved to have been raised on the reservation, learn my culture and who we were, but I've been trying to learn our language and learn who we are and where we come from, which is very important for us as being Native. But like you guys, like I heard saying that a lot of us are hurting each other, you know. Why? You know, because I wasn't raised on the reservation. We suffered as much as they did being in boarding schools, and maybe we suffered even more, you know, and we're not welcome as part of our people because we were separated. So I'm a contractor with the gas company, and all these, I've been dealing with the Bureau of Indian Affairs for so many years, and as a kid, as a teenager, I thought the BIA, for me, I thought they were there to help me, but the longer I worked with them, the more I found out that they really weren't there to help me. They were there more to it seemed to me that they were there to encourage me in a lot of things I did. So I reached out to a lot of my great-grandparents' siblings, my great-grandfather's siblings, to try to get to know them. And as a gas company, I used to go knocking the doors and doors, and I ran into a person whose name was Genevieve. And I told her, hey, I got a grandmother that was there. She goes, I did too. So I ended up meeting one of my cousins that way. So I think in March, about 2-3 years ago, I organized a family reunion, and we had 3 or 4 of the descendants of my great grandfather's brothers and sisters. I ended up having 52 people show up at the park. That was a miracle. And we come to find out that we live around the corner from a lot of them. You know, the next city. In fact, I probably ran into them and didn't even know they were relatives. And this is all because of the boarding schools, you know. So I just wanted to bring attention. So if there's anything that your community could do about the St. Boniface Cemetery to try to get it protected, that it won't fall, that someday they won't put a big old slab of cement over it and build a house over it. At least we can do that to protect the children that are buried there. And I always thought that when the city of Banning ceded that portion of the cemetery to Morongo, I would have rather seen it given away to a coalition of tribes or consortium, because a lot of the children that are buried there belong to different tribes, not just one tribe. And some of the children that are buried there are also from out of state, you know. And I know that some of the children from here who kept running away were transferred over to other states because they didn't want to go back home. So I didn't know my mother was in St. Boniface, but she's 87, 88 today. This Ramos was doing interviews of people who went to St. Boniface, and I took my mom there, and they interviewed her and they recorded her, and she told me things that I just couldn't believe that was happening inside the school. They were being beaten, they were made to eat raw food, being molested, and she ran away when she was 11, and she knew from experience that the people that ran away, they would catch them and bring them back. So what she did is she ran away, and I was listening to her telling her story. She said she jumped inside of a manhole and walked 2 miles underground to get away. And she never was returned back, but she got away. But I told my mom, why didn't you ever tell me that you went through this? Well, you know, we just don't talk about these things, you know? So, you know, just want to say thank you.
Hi, my name's Mary Bilardo, daughter of Emma, Taria, Jose. I'm a member of the Torres Martinez Desert Cahuilla, which is 32 miles southeast of Agua here. I don't have much to say. I've listened to everything that everybody's had to say, and I have comments in my head, and my head's gonna explode in a minute, but I just wanted, this gentleman kind of touched a nerve on my experience, such as it was. I grew up in a foster home from 8 months old till I was, I'll say 16, because that's when my sister found me and rescued me. But up until that point, I had the foster, they never did adopt me, so that said something to me. When I was 11, my brother said, well, of course they don't care about us. Look, they get a check every month, go to the mailbox and check. And I checked, and sure enough, I said, okay, pieces coming together. But I had to carry their last name, and for some reason, I had this different first name, but all that got cleared up once my sister came along. So, yeah, that's all I'm saying is you never give up, even in these crappy situations that we're in today, disrollment and all these other things we're talking about, we're still here, no matter what, and who cares if they're saying you're not enrolled? You know who you are. I know who I am, thanks to my sister, who also took me as soon as she was able to pull me away from the foster parent, to every reservation in Southern California to introduce me as her sister, just now coming home. She did the right thing, and at the time, because I had no knowledge of, you know, what being an Indian was about, I thought, oh man, where are we going home, you know, whatever. But now that I'm grown, and I've lived a life, more years on the reservation than off, I see what she did and I appreciate it. And I'm not gonna complain or bitch about anything, because TM's hanging tough, I don't care. The water's jacked up, yeah, we got fluoride and arsenic and everything, but we're still there and we're still pushing forward.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Judy Ramirez. I'm from the Central California. I was born in the area of Visalia, close to Fresno, and I currently live in Fresno, and we're from the Wachumni tribe. You know, my nose says the Yokets. Yokets means the people. A lot of people don't know that. So I'm Wachumni, and I'm here with my brother and my sister, 2 sisters and my niece. And we've been coming to a lot of the meetings throughout California, and the reason we came again today is to learn the stories from this area. You know, it's very interesting to learn what different areas have gone through. But just a brief history about our area is that my mom, she was raised in a valley on the foothills of the sequoia, the giant sequoias, Dunlap Valley. We're unfederally recognized. Our grandparents, my grandparents on both sides of my grandma, grandpa, their parents, great grandparents. When California was invaded, our people were used to walking around, gathering, living off the land. And then when they started doing the reservations, our ancestors worked the fields. So they never really, my grandmother was born on the Tule River reservation. And we have relatives from Porterville, Tule, and Lemoore, the Tachi, Santa Rosa Rancherias. But because our ancestors didn't stay there, we're what, federally unrecognized. But we tried that route. It's hard to follow through with being federally recognized. And so I would say the last maybe 10 years or so, my sister, she didn't come with us today, Darlene Franco, she was able to start a nonprofit organization. And over the years, since my mom, she lost a lot of her culture, but then she started bringing back our ceremonies, language, things like that, and that she kind of always introduced back to us as we were growing up. But so we've been strong in having our seasonal ceremonies and sweats and singing. A lot of our kids are doing picking up the singing and dancing. So that's all I wanted to say right now. So I know I'll leave a little bit for my siblings.
Dede, Hoishnem Cindy Tapleris, Nataya Wakshami, Judy's sister. Just to add a little bit to what my sister was saying, we currently have, let me turn this off. Sorry, I was recording for our history. But we have started because my mom, she's always instilled in us who we are. We are native from our local area. So my great grandmother, which was my mom's mom, she was a famous basket weaver. She has some videos that was been recorded and they're documented in the libraries down there in Tulare County. She was born on the Tule Indian Reservation, but because my grandfather, he was taken from Fort Tejon and put on the Tule Indian Reservation, that's where she was born, but he had to work. He had to, raise his family and buy food and whatever he had to support his children, so he moved off the reservation. So unfortunately, he lost the property there. So we are not federally recognized because he moved off. My grandmother, she married my grandpa Alex, who is the Wakchoni from Dunlap area. So he has been given allotment land, but of course it's locked, it's landlocked and it's in the mountains, so we're not able to get access to that. So, and I have a document saying that from 1912, document signed by Theodore Roosevelt saying that this property is given to Joe Wilcox, which is my great-great-grandfather. So we have all these document things that, a lot of good it's doing us because we can't use that land because the surrounding people who live there don't give us access to it. We can't drive on that property. We could walk on it, but I think they're using our land to graze their cattle. So we don't really know because we're not up there on a daily basis. And I think we went up there, a couple of years ago, Judy? But yeah, my mom, she was she's great. She was so great, she passed, and she married my dad. My dad was born in the Philippine Islands, so they created their own tribe, and you know they've raised us with the importance of love and sharing with each other, and that's who we are. That's who they raised us to respect each other and to share our love with each other, and we've had a great life. But you know, we have lost out on a lot. My mom, she was, you know, like my sister said, she was in boarding schools, and she didn't tell us about that until years until we were older, because she was trying to save us the pain. And when she did talk about it, I remember how sad she was, and she was just very stoic when she talked about it. And there's not a lot of things that she did tell us, because she just kept it to herself. But that's the way a lot of Native women are. They just hold the pain in, and they don't wanna burden their children. So that's kind of how we were raised. My dad, he respected my mom for who she was, like my mom respected my dad for who he was, because he was born in the Philippine Islands, and he was, growing up climbing coconut trees and doing fishing, and same kind of lifestyle my mom was raised in. So they made a good life together, and I'm pretty sure that between my brothers and sisters, they could testify that we've had a good life that we shared, and we all love each other. So thank you.
Yeah, my name is Davina Whitethorn. I work for the California Energy Commission. I'm also a member of the Navajo Nation. I'm here in support of my brothers and my sisters, and to support in any way. And I'm just happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Agua Caliente. Yeah.
Hi everyone, Graciela Moran. I'm here to listen. I manage our policy portfolio at the Inland Empire Community Foundation. But before that, I'm your neighbor. When my parents immigrated here to this country, the first people to lend their hand was a tribal community. So there's no me without you. So thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sierra Graves. I'm at the California Energy Commission. I'm here as an ally to listen and learn, and much appreciation for allowing me into this space, and much appreciation and gratitude for those that shared today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Courtney Coyle. I'm an attorney in private practice from the San Diego area. I've been driving Miss Carmen and providing some technical services for her 4 years now. It's hard to believe it's been 4 years, almost 4 years already on this commission, and it's been really awesome to be able to travel with Carmen across the state and meet everybody and see the different places and geography, and just really been a privilege and an honor. I wanted to note, it'd be bad of me not to say publicly what a fantastic museum Agua Caliente has. I don't even want to call it a museum. I mean, it's just fantastic. It's curated wonderfully. The fabrication is beautiful. The stories and the recordings and the curated objects and how they're put out there, it's just top notch and really moving. So if folks haven't had a chance to go in there, it's just right over on the other side, and I would really encourage you to do that, even stay an extra night to go and visit it tomorrow. It's really, really fantastic. So thank you for that and for hosting us. Maybe I'll get in trouble, who wants to correct Willie Pink on anything, but I will say that the Laguna Band of Mission Indians was never terminated. The patent fee does not mention termination, and as I understand it, if Congress doesn't specifically say something, you cannot infer something like a tribe has been terminated. So the Laguna Band has never been terminated to our knowledge. And I want to just applaud the CEC staff. You know, you guys have really been showing up consistently here and elsewhere, and I think that's really great. So thank you from one professional ally to another. It really means a lot just to show up, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Courtney. You put a good overview on all this. And Willie, I want to say, I'm surprised you're still here. We're both getting old gracefully, aren't we? Thank you all for being here, and I'm happy to say that I've gotten word that they've gotten control over the fire in my area, so that is always a worry, and I'm sorry to burden you with that. Nonetheless, it is what it is. But again, Agua Caliente, thank you so much for having us. Your museum, like Courtney said, is just top-notch, first class. One of the things that I found surprising, and yet I shouldn't have been surprised, was the articulation from your young monitors who handled the artifacts that came from where the museum sits. You know, for years I've been a Native American monitor, and I understand those artifacts belong to the ancestors. I hate NAGPRA. I think it's become a money-grabbing issue. I don't rebury folks because I don't know who they are, and we never know if you have a lingering spirit, if you're taking somebody to your home that doesn't belong there or doesn't want to be there. So there's consequences to all of that, and I understand all of that. So to see the attitude displayed in your museum where these young folks are saying thank you in a way, because when they hold this artifact, they're connected to their ancestors. My first job working with archaeologists, I was Dennis Gallegos' chief flunky, and I got paid less than minimum wage to sit out in the alley and wash these artifacts that were from the Remington project right on the border of Tijuana and San Diego, and the green dark metabolic material, but these were pieces of sculpture. And I used to interrupt their work because I told Dennis if this was my office, I'd tear down this wall and put in glass shells, and I'd make everybody look at these artifacts, because this is true artistry, true sculpture. So it's a contrast, and it makes you pause, and it makes you think, yes, these young folks have a right to touch these artifacts if it takes us to where we are and where we need to be. A genocide is erasing your culture. It's plain and simple. And my work with the projects, development, and all of that, I was telling the lady over there, I had a dream before. Anyway, in the dream, it ended up with a bunch of rodents. And I thought, that's a strange dream. And of course, this is part of our culture. Our dreams tell us things. And the next day or two, Courtney sends me a copy of a letter that was written by the city fathers of El Centro, trying to discredit my participation with the agencies. And when I got to the signature page, long list of all these people they sent it to. And they're all agencies, and I said, see, that's my dream, that's those rodents nibbling away at our heritage, and that's what archaeology does, is nibble away under the pretense of data recovery, and aren't we doing good work, when in fact they're paving the road for development. So yes, we need to participate in that, and if you have young folks who are interested in, encourage them to do that. There's nothing wrong with touching those old artifacts. It's a blessing. So it's been a privilege for me to participate. It's been enlightening. It's amazing when we grow up and we become adults, and later in life you You learn things that you should have learned when you were a child. And you ask yourself, is my life been a lie? Because that generation, my father's generation that Willie talked about, that's the society you have to live in. You better understand it. So they kept things from us. And rightfully so, I guess. But on the other hand, there's an ingredient in us that I believe comes to us because of our culture, and that's part of our intuitive knowledge that we should never ignore. We should really pay attention to that and make that a priority. Our dreams, I remember I used to drive this black psychologist all over Southern California because I didn't have anything else to do. And his wife was my father's nurse. And so I just figured, you know, it's a great opportunity. So we had some great conversations. And he got to talking about dreams one time, and he said, oh, they're just a reflection of what's going on in your life. That's not true. Our dreams are special. We have dreams, and then we have dreams. And my dream about rodents was one of those dreams. It's telling me, you be careful. You have enemies that you don't know anything about. And so my friend had a dream one night, and it was about my father's passing. And he changed his whole philosophy. He said, you know, I understand what you're talking about now. So I say that because I would encourage you to don't be bashful with the people that you interact with. Speak up. It doesn't get done unless somebody crabs about it. So let's keep crabbing. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Hi, my name is Maureen DiMaggio. My Indian name is Malay. I come from the Mendocino area. I want to thank Agua Caliente for receiving us, receiving our words, and more importantly, receiving our spirits to intermingle. It's a long way from Northern California, but in my heart, I do feel home. And I think I feel home because of the people here who I've gathered. I've gone around to many of the meetings as well, and I've followed the culture, my culture. I didn't say who my people were, where they came from. It's Yokayo and Masutakea. We were gathered in the area of Tumipomo. And I would like, which I have in many other different lands, to ask if it's okay to present a song, which is the way of my people, in a way to connect and honor all of us and who we are. And so is it okay if I do that?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And be comfortable, so please, you don't need to stand, it's just what I do, so. And this, this particular song I sang one other time at one other land, and it's a healing song. It's a healing song to draw the powerful energy that's here, to weave it into the beams, so that you can feel it from head to toe, and know the land and know the people, and the sacredness that we say that we are. And I'll be pulling from a long way from Northern California, so if my voice is a little shaky, I apologize for that, but it's just to get used to here. Machihung se wehe, de la hemkwe do o. Guyai ye he, de la hemkwe do o. So ba johayo ti'i, amoho ti'i, ju de la oea. Guyai, guyai. Machi hum bishewe, de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Zoba jo hayati, I'm a hujati, ju till I aware to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Zoba jo hayati, I'm a hojati, ju till I aware to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Zoba jo hayati, I'm a hujati, ju till I aware to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. I'm a hujati, ju till I aware to. I'm a hujati, ju till I aware to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. I'm a hujati, ju till I aware to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to. Zoba jo hayati, I'm a hujati, ju till I aware to. Guyai, guyai, hey, 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 de la hem kuwe to.
Oh, is that all you have to say? Oh, I can't go after that. Goodness. They'll write down.
Well, that was beautiful, thank you. I think we all needed that. That was beautiful, thank you. Much it's very strong. It's resonating for me right now, so that was like, how many times did you turn around? 4? And I could close.
So
I
it's
felt
closed.
it. I felt it. It was good. Thank you. Hi, you guys. I'm Camille Norvo, lineal descendant. So I come from many tribes. My mom's family, they fled from Texas. They're Apache and Pueblo. So they fled for their lives to California and made their home in California. And my father is from, his descendancy is from Warner Springs, Capeno, and they were taken from the, I would say, genocide and massacre that occurred at Warner Springs. The Kupa people are, I would say, the last of the Mohicans out here in this way. So finding my family out here is been an everyday mission, because wherever I go, I meet someone new that I have relations with, which they say, which we're all relations, which I do believe, because once you start talking and learning, you figure out how you're connected, because we're a small, just 1% of Indians in California that are all related. And I do want to say that I didn't know I was Native American
until I was first grade. So it was a secret because it was bad to be Indian. You had to hide and be Mexican or someone else because you had this dogma and this racism towards being Native. So I was fortunate enough to be raised out here to where our school invited the powwow dancers, and that's the school telling me, hey, you're also Native American. So that was my first introduction to my identity. So trying to figure it out has been a little struggle because of the policies and all that disenrollment. I applied to be enrolled because I'm an Indian adoptee, landowner in Paula. And so because of that, I do have those documents. I applied when I was 16. My dad died when he was 15. He was taken by the government, foster care. He ran away, saved his siblings, made a life for them. But it was really sad because that's pretty much everyone's story. We were all taken away. We were all misplaced and had to figure out our own identity. And that was the way the government to spread us around to kill the Indian, kill the man, because we weren't civilized apparently. So finding all these documents and reliving all that, it is hurtful because knowing that that doesn't get changed, the next generations, the next 7 generations, we're gonna go through the same cycles and we're not gonna get anywhere. So we do need to come together. We need to stop Indian versus Indian, tribe versus tribe, and we need to come together, especially now in this day of age. I just find it, a little difficult because I don't have a tribe that I can be enrolled in. Find myself always being welcomed by Agua Caliente, which thank you, because I have no other feeling of family or tribe because of what happened generations ago. So being welcomed by Agua Caliente is everything. Being welcomed by Torres Martinez is everything. By Morongo is everything. But just to have that acknowledgement and to give it our own land back, that is what we need. That's what's gonna justify the future generations to understand where they come from and who they are, so who they can be and change the world. I do believe that we do need to fix what happened with the genocide and the boarding schools, and we do need to have California recognize that all the children that my brother Vincent had mentioned that are not being protected, and they need to be protected because these are the voices that can't speak. They didn't come home and they were taken. I, as a mother, I feel very deeply about that, and I think there needs to be more of a campaign in California to protect the burial grounds of the boarding school victims, and returning the lands that were taken. Thank you.
I want to thank Agua Caliente for allowing us to be here today. Like my sisters were saying, my name's Susan, from North Truman Tribe. We were fortunate enough to be able, because we were doing our ancestral background at one time, and we came across some funding that we were able to get, and we used it to attend these truth and healing meetings up and down the state of California. It was very enlightening for us just to be able to get to the other areas and listen to the other tribes. And we're all similar, we're all the same. Unrecognized, recognized, disenrolled people. And like the gentleman was saying, we all need to just be ourselves, whether we're recognized, unrecognized, disenrolled. We know our history. We know where we came from. We know our songs. We know our ceremonies. At least we do. I was fortunate
when I was little to be able to travel with because my dad had a car, he was able to take my grandma, my mom, and we'd travel to the different places together, her materials for her basketry, to gather the wild foods that were necessary to feed our families. And and then to go to ceremony, like when we had our, the deaths in the family. And my dad was able to take us to these ceremonies, and we were able to be there with my mom and my grandma and my grandpa and all our relatives. So, I never thought of it as I was growing up because it was just something that was there. But as I got older, we kind of lost that. But then we started bringing it back, and we're fortunate to be able to, my sister was able to get some funding for a program for our youth, and to see our youth, be taught the culture in a setting where they're all together, they're all singing together, they're all learning bits and pieces of the language. We haven't gotten that good at the language part, but we're getting there. But they know the ceremonies now, they know the songs, and they practice it almost on a weekly basis. I won't say every week, but especially during the vacation holidays, they get together and they're learning and they're using their knowledge to pass on to their little brothers and sisters. After I moved back to California, because I had gone to Kansas with my husband, had 5 children, but when I came back, I was able to secure a job with the school district working for an American Indian program. I didn't have a college education, but at that time, in the early 70s, we did what we had to do. So I was able to get in there with the American Indian program. My mom was able to get on with the Tulare County Department of Education with the American Indian program. She only had 8th grade education for the longest time. And when I moved back home, she finished going to COS, 2-year college, got her degree. I taught her how to drive. She didn't know how to drive all these years. So we worked together, my mom and I. We traveled, we did a lot of traveling because we were both working for the same program, both went to the same conferences and stuff. But she started long before this. She was engaged with the California Indian Education when it started. She was engaged with the ICLS program, the language program, when that first started. As a matter of fact, when we started that program, she met a lady that was at the boarding school with her. She was only 10, maybe, I don't even know how old she was. She was only there for a year. These 2 ladies met each other at this language conference, and they were like this. They remembered each other. And they were like 10, and they were like in their late 50s when they met again. So that's a long time. So, like I said, we're fortunate to be able to have traveled. I was fortunate to have traveled and met a lot of people up and down the state and some of the different other states. But it's my daughter, Deborah, and my grandson, her son. He has been working for the youth program, and he was doing, what do you call it, working with the land, and he went ecology. He went to a fire prevention training with the fire burns with our Indian partners. And so in the past 6 months, he had decided he wanted to join the conservation force, California Conservation Corps. My mouth is dry. Anyway, he's stationed in Camarillo, so he's been up there with all those fires. Not, fighting the fires, but clearing and doing the necessary work that, helps the firefighters, and we're so proud of him. So,
Family hero.
and Cindy says he's family hero. Oh, thank you.
Cadet, Hoyoshnim Depthero. This is my mom, Susan, and then of course my aunties and my uncle. Had the opportunity to travel with them because I'm currently unemployed, but enjoying this time with my family. And yes, I got to attend a few of these meetings as well, and it's always nice to visit places that are different but we're the same. And I just want to thank all the speakers that shared today, the gentlemen, you know, all your words, every one of you it's very heartfelt for me, and you know, I guess that's why I'm here, to absorb, reignite whatever needs to happen with me and our family and the struggles that we go through with our tribe. And you know, it's good to see that, you know, not just California, but all the tribes across the nation, what we're all go through, as we're different but we're the same. And I think somebody said, you shared the Lakota. One of my best friend is Lakota, and so I recognize that right away. But in our language, we say Kumoinim Yopech, which means we are the people, so, or all my relations. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ron. This is my third conference I've been to you. Thank you for allowing us to come down here. Agua Caliente, you finally finished this project. My timeshares right across County Court, and I've watched you guys. I saw the old building, which is beautiful, and they've torn it down, and you've been working on this like 10 years or something like that. It's finally finished. It's the first time I've been into it. And I walked down the hall, it looked like your exhibit looks beautiful, so I'll have to go visit. But thank you guys for what your comments were. I wish that name could be said in this document because they need to be brought out. For myself, my dad's Filipino, my mother's Native. And we're probably the last tribes in the state to be encountered the people who invaded this continent, because the mission people, Mexico, the settlers that came up, they didn't go into Sequoia Park in the Sierras. So they finally came in and we had to deal with them. So we kept a lot of traditions. We're unrecognized. My grandfather had to work with the ranchers in the area that came in and settled there in. So we're unrecognized. But we had a lot of, my grandfather was trained to be a medicine healing person. And so, but he lost all that as the civilization came in, and we lost that. My mother went to Riverside Institute. She got out, met my dad from the islands, and we talked about tribe. I went to visit my dad's island, and they're as tribal as we are over here. And then this last summer, I went to New Zealand and to Australia, and I met the native people there, and they're going through the same thing as we're doing here. So, but I have a strong woman in my family. My mother, real strong. My grandmother, real strong. And I have 7 sisters, and I'm the oldest. But so my mother coming out of the boarding schools, she knew that her kids needed to be survive in this culture. So, and she saw me, the only boy, and so she didn't probably share with me as much as she did later with my sisters about what she experienced, because she knew she needed to push me towards this. And so, and she did. And I went to college, I was a recipient of the Maple Creek Will Union Scholarship. And this is back in 1961. And I had the scholarship for 4 years, and it was $1,000 a year, and that was a lot of money then. And I became I got drafted, well, I did get drafted in 67. Went to Vietnam, came back, and I had a teacher's credential, so I started teaching. I taught for 39 years, so. But watching my mother and my sister Susan and my other sisters kind of bring back the culture, because my mother started bringing back the language and a lot of stuff, and I've seen what they have done, my sisters have done. That's why I was so disappointed in this last election, because we did not see the female power that we could have had in this nation. I'm glad you're here, but what you said about the fire, that's very important. Fire is not a bad thing. When my mother and my sisters brought the culture back, we started doing fire and dancing around the fire, and you bring it back to when people transition, like my brother-in-law just transitioned a couple of months ago. We have ceremonies that include fire, so fire is not a bad thing. In fact, in the Sierra Nevadas, the tribes up there, they control the fire to burn the clearing the forest and stuff. That was going on thousands of years ago. So we know how to do that. So we just know how to manage fire. Okay, I think I can say a lot more, but.
Can I add something? I just want to add something real quick regarding our nonprofit. We're training our young kids. Our kids are little ones from birth to 25, 26 years old. They all get together and they sing their songs. They they do rattles, and I just want to mention that my nephew, the firefighter, our family hero, Alex, he's a mentor. We have other mentors that are, teaching our younger kids. The older kids are teaching the younger kids. And he helps. He's a personal mentor to my little grandson. He's 11 years old. His name is Jordan. And he taught him how to do the rattles with the willow sticks, and just teaches him a lot of things. They went to the zoo and he was there with him petting the animals, and he just took them under his wing, and that's why I call him, he's our family hero, because my little great grandson looks up to him. And when the fire started, we were watching the news, me and my grandson, because I live with him. I take him to school every day because his dad goes to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, so I stay there and I help take care of him, take him to school. Anyway, he was watching the news with me, and I says, that's where your mentor Alex is. He's fighting those fires. He goes, Grandma, he goes, what does he do? Does he do the chainsaw or does he do the hose? And I said, I don't know, let's text Aunt Debbie and ask her. So I text her and sent her this long questions that Jordan had wanted to know about his mentor. And he texts us back, and we were watching the news. He goes, and then Alex sent us a picture with his crew wearing a blue helmet, yellow jacket, and he was holding the saw. And I showed Jordan, I says, look, there's your mentor, Alex. He goes, I knew he handled the saw. And he was so proud. And he taught him also how to build fires over the years. When we have our ceremonies, he does the rocks, and he knows how to build the fires. And he watches us in our ceremony when we do our spring ceremony and we build our fires. The elders get together, and the young ones, they come and they help because the elders can't bend over and do the fire. So we ask our little young ones who can help us, put the wood in the fire. So Jordan knows how to build a fire. So a couple of weeks ago, New Year's, he decides he wants to build a fire outside because that's the beginning of the new year. And he wanted to pray for the new year. So he's been taught a lot of things, not only him, but he had his little cousins around him, they're girl cousins, and one little boy cousin. And then he says, you know, we have to pray first. We have to thank our Creator. And because this fire is important, so it don't spread and get out of control, so we have to be careful. So he learned a lot from his mentor, Alex. That's why I call him our family hero. But our program that we have got funding through our nonprofit organizations has taught not only our young ones, but it has taught us elders. Because, you know, I do a lot of sewing, so they hired me to go over there and show them how to sew. I make my skirts, I make a lot of things, but yeah, it's a communication between the whole entire family in our community. We also give out food. We also have a farm that we raise our food, and you know, right now, there's gonna be a problem in the future where our vegetables and our fruits are coming from, our grains, and yeah, our eggs, we have chickens, and so we pass out food every week to our community, not only to our native community, but to the public, and so we're having a really good time, and it's very enlightening to us, and our community says, you know, they're in need, and they're thankful.
Just want to add that little bit, sorry, we're not too long.
Shokaka, that means good evening in Quiche, one of the languages of the land that I come from. My name is Gustavo Guerra Vasquez. I am a poet, a professor. I came up with the term peaceer, as in a warrior for peace. Some people call me problematic. In Spanish, they call me a peleonero, which means fighter. And I'm changing that to good troublemaker, as in a maker of good trouble. I want to thank the Agua Caliente people, as well as the California Truth and Healing Council. I'm going to tell you about myself first, because that's who I am, and then I'll tell you about what I do and why I'm here. I was born in Guatemala, also known as Ishimuleo, one of the places of corn, Maya land. I am of indigenous descent, yet I am what is referred to as a moose, a foreigner, or a stranger on the indigenous land. Due to U.S. intervention and acts of genocide in Guatemala, I was brought to and raised on Tongva land until I went to Ohlone land for school, UC Santa Cruz and UC Berkeley. I'm a PhD candidate in ethnic studies with a designated emphasis on women, gender, and sexuality. Those are my credentials, right? When I went to school, I started practicing with different groups who were doing sweats, and I've been welcomed by a lot of different people. For almost 20 years, I worked for an agency that worked with Native peoples and commissions in Los Angeles County, which resulted in the removal of the statue of Cristobal Colon on Tongva land. Today, I'll tell you what I'm here. I'm a conciliator with the Community Relations Service of the United States Department of Justice. CRS, as we're called, was created 60 years ago when then President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, and we are charged with helping resolve intergroup conflicts based on color, race, and national origin. We've worked with Indian and indigenous groups before. They don't have to be federally recognized, or we don't have to work with 501c3s. We work with any group based on the categories that I want to mention right now. In 2009, then President Obama signed into law the Matthew Shepard James Byrd Jr. Hate Crime Prevention Act, which expanded our mandate to the prevention and response to violent hate crimes and community tensions based on the original protected categories of race, gender, national origin, and added gender, gender identity, and sexuality, disability, and religion. We mediate intergroup conflicts, we facilitate groups towards solutions, and we educate on preventing and responding to hate and improving relations among groups based on the categories I mentioned. So I'm here to listen and help. We are actually going to work with a coalition of people, including LULAC, the NAACP or NAACP, as well as the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, and we've been doing hate crime forums throughout the inland counties. And we're doing one in the Coachella Valley later on this year, and we're gonna do one up in the high desert, either in Adelanto or Victorville, in the middle of the year. We're gonna do one in Claremont in March. That's gonna be March 21st in the afternoon. And our region covers the entire West Coast, so either myself or one of my colleagues can support in some of the work that I've talked about from here all the way to Alaska. And then we also have colleagues throughout other regions. We don't litigate, we don't prosecute, we don't investigate. We educate, we mediate, and as we like to say, we conciliate. So I'm gonna stop there because I know that we've been here for a long time. But you know, some of the time, maybe I can read you all a poem when I'm not on federal time.
So we.
How do you get the word out about your Coachella gathering that you're gonna have? I just wanna make sure that we know about it too.
I have cards. You can give me your info, and then we can go through the process.
Okay, well, we're a little over time, so I don't want to keep folks, and I think everybody had a chance to speak today. Again, we do have another convening next week at Quetzon, if folks are available. And remember, bring your identification just in case. I'm wondering, Kiana, if you'd be able to do a closing grounding for us before we all leave today. And then the Cultural Center, I think, is open till 5 if folks haven't been able to take a look. And it might be a nice way to kind of ground yourself in this space as well on your way out.
So what I want to do is what we call a container exercise. And what this is when we talk about things, and this happened several times today as expected, we become what we call activated. You know when you talk to someone, you start crying, you're like, where'd that come from? Right? That's us getting activated because somewhere it sits deep inside of us, right? And what we talk about today is not just what's happening to us today, like this is something that's gone across generations, and that comes up in us, like that is, not only do we know that, but it's also been scientifically proven. You know, the generational trauma comes out in the current generation, and that we feel it. And so when we do this exercise, it's not to tell you to not have feelings. We expect everyone to have feelings. It's to make it so you just go about your day a little bit better. And so think about these big feelings that have come up today. And just think of a container, somewhere you would want to put them, just to set them aside. We're not telling them to go away. Our feelings are real and valid. It could be a little wooden box. It could be a little tiny acorn that you hollowed out. It could be something as big as the earth. Anything that you feel is fitting. And then you decide how you'll stick these feelings into this container. Will it go through the top, through the door? Will it go through the side or through the bottom? And you can picture yourself, or you can physically do it, and you just kind of tap those feelings into this container. And we're just putting them to rest for right now so we can go about our day. Because a lot of us have travel and other things to do after this. And just put them in there. And then think about how you're going to close it up. Will you put a lid on it? Maybe you'll wrap it in some ribbon. Maybe you'll pull out the duct tape, right? Just wrap it up. And we'll close it. And maybe you want to do something with it. Put it on a shelf, put it in your pocket, put it in a big cave in the mountain or in the river, whatever feels right to you. And then take one more minute and see if there's anything else you need. Does it need a little guardian by it? Do you need to say a little prayer or blessing with it? Sing it a song? And as we tuck those things away, we just want to, thank ourselves also for coming here today, and honoring our ancestors and just really speaking our truths, because they're so important. And after today, I put cards on the back. If something comes up and you need to talk to me, I think I only had like 4 cards, so they're stickers too, but you can get a hold of me or reach out to these guys. And I wish safe travels to everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you again to Agua Caliente for hosting us. And we hope that you have a restful weekend. Take care.
Alright, drive safe. Bye guys.
Are you trying to replace me? I sometimes
Why'd you go to the gym?
I go down there. That was for and she calls my wife sis, and I don't know how that works. I think the women are always just one
Thank you.
Safe travels home.
Sure good.
Safe travels home.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay.
And stay in contact, you two.